Welcome to another episode of Metatrends with Mark and Mike. We have with us Andrea Steinbrett. And she's the reason why I wanted her on this call is because she's got a ton of expertise and experience in helping companies to exit. So you're an exit planning strategist. So what I want to do is find out like where uh what got you to here. What kind of advice would you have for entrepreneurs? And then what advice would you have for the entrepreneurs that you see on a regular basis in Vistage? So Andrea is actually a Vistage member. We met at a recent presentation I gave in San Diego.
Great. Thanks for the introduction, Mark. Really appreciate it. So thanks for having me on. Happy to be here. Happy to meet Michael and learn more about his journey as well. So as Mark mentioned, I'm the CEO of a firm in San Diego, California called Exit Consulting Group. And we help companies with their exit strategy. We can actually help companies transact. And that tends to be the buzz that everybody focuses on. But what we found in our course of service to the market is there's a lot more work around the preparation and execution of the transaction and then what happens after that. So we've kind of shifted our focus in how we service, and we really focus on the transition of the exit, knowing that a transaction's part of that journey and the roadmap. So that's how it started, or that's where we start from. A little bit more about our firm. I'm the G2 is what we call our Generation 2 owner of the firm. I have two other partners, our founder and another partner we brought in named Scott Spohr, who's our CFO. John Ogram's our founder, and the reason why we exist, the ethos behind our company is John was a solopreneur. He had a construction company. He then brought in his family into it. So he had a family-owned business. He ran it for 10 years with his cousin and his dad, and 10 years in realized it was time for him to exit. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have a roadmap, but he started calling up service providers to help him. And within a year, he was able to exit the business. He didn't really understand the process, and he was a formally trained Arthur Andersen CPA. So he understood some things about business between being an accountant and then owning a construction company as a GC. But he just felt very confused. He felt very lost. He felt like he didn't understand all the different mechanics of what an exit strategy or a transaction was. He also took a seller carry note in that journey, and within a year taking that, the company went BK. So his seller carry wasn't worth anything. So just lumped trauma upon trauma upon trauma, and realized there's not really a group out in the marketplace right now speaking to the business owner. There's definitely service providers speaking to each other about what the business owner needs to do. And typically, once they get in front of the business owner, it's a push to a transaction. So all of those work in certain instances. They're not bad approaches. We just take a different approach, and we have a very niche market and working directly with the business owners. We also work as their quarterback, if you will, if you were listening to our earlier chatter about football, and we bring in the right bench of players to help them. Not everybody needs the same CPA. Not everybody needs the same corporate attorney. Not everybody needs the same insurance provider, auditor. And so we make sure we gather the right resources, and when we're all sitting at the table, we're talking to the business owner and not ourselves in business owner speak, not industry speak. So we really try to break it down, and I'll use a very buzzword in the Culinary Institute and provide a deconstructed approach to exit strategy. And so far, it's well received. We have a lot of fun doing it. There's always new problems to solve. We work with privately held businesses, a lot of family held businesses, and a lot of businesses that are transitioning internally to key employees and family members.
Yeah, well, that sounds great. I'm kind of curious about it I see a massive opportunity for virtually everybody on this call and the people listening. Right. The reason why is because more companies will change hands in the next 15 years than ever before in American history. So,
Yeah.
frankly, if you don't sell your business, you bought it. So what are we going to transition to? It's like the only thing certain is death and taxes. So how do we handle this massive population that's going to change hands? Well, the majority of all companies are small mom and pops. So for our YouTube audience, that were mostly entrepreneurs and some entrepreneurs, it's like, what kind of wisdom can we glean from that and give to them? You see what I'm saying, Andrea?
Yeah. So I would say, one of the things that I think gets missed, and let me digress for just a second here. My other partner, Scott, and I, we all come from an accounting background. We all worked as CFOs and consultants prior to linking up together. So we definitely take a numbers-based approach as the foundation. And I would say it's really important to make sure you set up your numbers correctly from the get-go. You will spend tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars correcting that when you're ready to exit your business if you don't do it right the first time. And yes, it costs money. And yes, it takes time. And yes, you have to bring in outside providers typically, but it's worth it. So I would say from the beginning, between entrepreneurs or if even current entrepreneurs listening, is make sure you have good accounting practices. Make sure you understand your numbers and make sure you know how, when you do things in your company, they affect your financial statements. I could geek out down that road, but I'll stop there on the financial soapbox, if you will, and keep going. The other thing I always did as a CFO when I entered any new company or client was ask to look at their buy, sell, and their operating agreement. That's a very important tool to put in place from the beginning because you just don't know how the future is going to play out. And so, always preparing that you will exit your business at some period in time, could be 30 years down the road. But putting those tools in place now will always prompt you to update them if you're not exiting right away, but then to fall back on them if you are. They really do set the guidelines and they work almost as an insurance policy that people aren't left in a lurch should you need to do something quickly, should you need the ability to be agile. So those are the two big precursors we always emphasize when we're looking at new clients. And normally our entrepreneurs don't have a lot of experience in those areas. So find people who do, lean on them, pay them to help you, and then make sure that they're checking in with you regularly. And if not on a monthly basis as bookkeeping or financial services, on an annual basis from legal, and make sure that tax laws change and policy changes and that your documents continue to stay relative and live. What you don't want is to lose control at the end.
There's let me lend some fodder to this too. Mike, I don't even know if I've introduced you to Tosh Salas yet. In fact, we should probably have her on the call. She's an attorney that sets up family offices. So for those of you not aware, what that means is very, very wealthy families can afford to actually start their own financial advising company that works only for them. They're called family offices, right? Sometimes you'll have a group of wealthy families get together and do the same thing. That's called a multifamily office. So now, bear in mind, I'm a fiduciary wealth manager. We're not allowed to actually deal with that world, right? So you either deal with retail clients or you deal with institutional clients. You can't deal with both, right? So the idea here is I don't have a lot of experience in that world. So I reached out to an attorney that sets up family offices. She's out of Brooklyn and she just earned the rights. This is going to get really interesting, Andrea. This is totally germane to you. She's starting an economic forum. She actually just acquired the rights to the U.S. Economic Forum, and she recognizes one thing that's kind of wrong with normal M&A style conventions or conferences. The people that belong to them are all M&A advisors. So the deal is, you walk in the door and you're not an M&A advisor. It's like being accosted, right? So what she's doing is she's setting up the U.S. Economic Forum for businesses only that pass muster. So let's call it investment grade. And it's like I'm just winding down on my most recent study here, 10-year study of Vistage, and 80% of Vistage members will not qualify for a transaction. 20% will, but only 5% of that 20 are what are considered investment grade. So what she's going to be doing is bringing investment grade companies into a forum that the only other participants in that forum are family offices. So she swims in that circle. She needs our help to do it. So she needs our content. So we're granting her the back end of this content for her private middle market economic forum. And then what we're going to be able to do is build an academy around how to get companies from not being able to pass due diligence all the way to investment grade. And then some of that's acquisition strategies, what have you. But the conversation with her started with me reaching out to her and saying, look, a friend of mine came up with an idea. He's an advisor, but only restaurants. This is Charles Wilkinson. We had him on the show a while back. So he came up with the idea, well, what if we went straight to the investors and had them pay for the advice to fix the company, maybe participate a little earlier in on the claims, and then maybe they participate in the liquidity event, that type of thing. This way it doesn't cost the business owner anything. They're more likely to engage the advisor. And Tosh, she turned to me and she said, "It's a non-starter, Mark." I said, "Why is that?" She said, "Well, because the family offices are not like private equity. They don't have the ability to run the company. What they're interested in are investments that have to run on their own,
Yeah.
not private equity to kind of add value to flip them to, some publicly traded company down the road." I
Yeah.
said, "Oh, all right. So what that does, that tells me that the business owner, unless they're willing to invest in advice, then they're not going to get funded." So because that'll just be a non-starter from word go. So
Yeah.
the challenge though that I see is sometimes the advisors are, because they get paid on transaction, they're too busy rushing the business to market.
Yep.
So I'm thinking there's some skills about how do we get them to improve the curb appeal of the company. But before we get off the topic, because we run out of time at the half hour mark, is what I'm curious about is the entrepreneur market. I'm thinking it's this. You tell me if this sounds right to you, Andrea. They're in a position to start a business, but only a few percentage wise actually make it above 3 million. So they get kind of stuck
Yeah.
in that no man's land. So the idea here is maybe the best way to start a business is to acquire one that's already broken through that ceiling. And then you
Yep.
go on an acquisition spree, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. So on that note, there's a new buzzword happening right now in academia and in the business world called ETA, and it's entrepreneurship through acquisition. So the marketplace is now actually starting to educate people on how to be entrepreneurs through acquisition. Even 30 years ago, you say entrepreneur and you see the cartoon meme, right? You see the manic, you see the person spinning around, you see the Tasmanian devil. There's a reason why that's out there, but that's not the only type of entrepreneur. Entrepreneur also doesn't always mean founder, and we confuse that a lot in acquisition. And so now universities, particularly MBA programs right now, are starting to put in coursework on what ETA is because they see all these up and coming entrepreneurs. The market is flooded with privately held businesses, and to your point, Mark, that need future owners. The demand for the product is still there. We don't necessarily need to go out and keep recreating new widgets for the market. We need to go out there and keep creating new leaders who can take these companies and really transition them into growth. So I absolutely believe what you're saying. The other side of business that's shifting, which you're all probably very well aware of, is conscious culture, right? That's become a big part of running successful companies, particularly for the new workforce that's coming online. So these entrepreneurs who can buy and acquire established business, their legacy is no longer about creating the widget that changes the world. Their legacy becomes creating the company that changes the world, building the team that changes the world. And we're starting to actually educate and push more in that space. So it's very interesting time. It's very exciting. There's lots of opportunity. And if you're opening your eyes and looking, it's there. It just looks different than how it used to look.
Sounds great. You got any questions about any of this stuff, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, my world is communications. I have an appreciation for the fact that if you're working with the C-suite, you know that sometimes they're brilliant when it comes to finances, or they have the right idea of taking their company or where they move the company, but they're not always great. At least, uh, hold on, I'm sorry. I don't know why my camera went out. Can you all see me?
No, but I think it's because you guys just dealt with a hurricane. You know,
I mean,
it's odd. You go, I'm a communications expert, but your actual feed is choppy.
oh, sorry. Hopefully you can see me perfectly now. But the main issue is I just feel, and I'm not the guy to hire if you want to sell a product necessarily. I'm more of a C-suite communications advisor. That's what I specialize in. What I have found is many chief executive officers have a great vision, but they may not be able to communicate it well. Or there's a crisis and manage that crisis in terms of communicating with internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Well, is that what you have found in? I understand you're more on the finance.
Absolutely. Yeah, it both in servicing other clients and in businesses that I've been in and run. So I use this analogy all the time, which to help our clients understand how we help them prepare their company for a good exit. I say, how many times have you stood in front of your company and you've thrown out a new initiative? And I use the color purple as an example. And you say, we're going to do the purple initiative. It's going to be great. We're going to change the world with purple. And everyone's jumping up and down and they're like, yes, purple. The meeting ends. C-suite goes to the boardroom to have their meeting. Everyone else goes to the water cooler. A C-suite walks out of the boardroom to get their coffee, and they hear everybody talking about blue. And they're excited about blue, and they can't wait to go do blue, and it's blue, blue, blue. And he walks back into the boardroom with his cup of coffee, and the boardroom's talking about red. And everybody's super excited, and they can't wait to do red, and they're driving forward. Now, they didn't get it totally wrong, right? But they got it not the same. And so you can already see the fork in the road where if we're not crystal clear and overemphasize and iterate exactly what's going on and be direct, just by having a change, you're going in different directions. Happens all the time, and it normally happens in different layers of the company. So bringing in the mics of the world, right? And saying, make sure your communication is clear, because if you think you're going after red and a buyer comes in and hears blue, you're not going to transact that company. And your employees are going to be frustrated, and your executives are going to be frustrated. And probably your clients are going to be frustrated, and your vendors. So it's the whole economic flow of conscious culture, and it starts with communication.
Because I know that it, do you find that some of these chief executives, regardless of the size of the company, but if they have a very public crisis that includes scrutiny from the media, includes questions, that they're in reactive? Are they throughout the year in proactive mode, making sure that they prepare for an eventual crisis? So, like, for what I always recommend is you have to have tabletop exercises once a quarter where the worst case scenario, the worst possible that you can confront as a company, that's happening, and we are working backwards from the event. How do we set this up? How are we going to be prepared for that? I have one client, that's in an area that was impacted by Hurricane Helene, not even the one we're discussing now in Florida. Hurricane Helene, which hit us 2 weeks ago, but also really wreaked havoc over Georgia and North Carolina. One of the companies said, well, we're located in a smaller town, and we're helping state and local officials clear roads because there's vegetation that fell because of the waves. And we're also helping with several other initiatives, but helping folks within the town with food, with water, temporary power, don't have electrical connection. I said, well, that's good news. That means you're being a great neighbor, not a good neighbor, a great neighbor during the most challenging time you probably have ever faced. Yeah, that's true. And I said, so why aren't you telling anybody about it? Well, maybe we do. No, no, no. You must. This is part of your story. It's part of your company culture. You got to call HR in and say, we need to show the public, not just our investors, not just state and local officials, but public, that we're not just in a small town with a global reach. We're a company with a global reach in this small town that's part of this small town that cares about this small town and doesn't forget our roots, and incorporate that into your communication strategy.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely the right playbook. No, I don't see companies doing it. Typically, to Mark's point, if they're trying to be investable companies, many of the energies you see in C-suite are bootstrapped, get it done, tacticians, heads down. They're not thinking about what could happen. And I don't even think it's on their radar that it could happen to them, right? Because that happens to everybody else. And that's just human nature. So I think having that kind of strategy as part of their strategic plan is extremely important and critical, and it makes them a more valuable company regardless if that horrible thing happens. So,
We're actually, we're and my other half, city commissioner here. We're discussing our strategic plan next week, and we have public meetings in Florida, so anyone can view it. But one of the areas that I harped on Mark is, we're a city, the second largest city in the second populous county in 2 million people live in this county, 175,000 live in our city. We really need to do a better job of communicating with our residents, our businesses, regions. There's regional approaches with other businesses and organizations, and that has to be a of our strategic plan. Now, I'm limited because I'm an elected official, not the administration. We're run by a manager, but I insisted on it being part of our strategic plan. We gotta be proactively
yeah.
communicating.
Yep. I agree.
Okay, so we're at the point where we got to transition over to the U.S. Economic Forum. If you're interested in, follow us over at the Private Middle Market Forum. We'll put a link in the bottom of this video so you can follow us on there. And then the second half will be on there, especially if you are a business owner and you want to find out like how to actually get funded, how to sell the right way, all that type of stuff. So please join us over there.